got very messy background though.
Oh, I actually love backgrounds with stuff in because
Okay, there's a lot of
I
stuff
just think they're
there.
the best. They're the
Okay,
best to
that's
look
fine.
at, especially when it's
Okay.
obviously artists and creative people or writers or whatever. When I look at
Okay.
background,
But
I'm
this isn't my studio. This is my house.
no, it's brilliant. This is exactly how
You
houses
know, when
should
you're
be.
like, my messy studio, and you're like, nope, it's actually my house. So my name is Gayle Chong Kwan. I'm a half Scottish and half Chinese Mauritian artist, and I'm based in Leytonstone in East London. And the kind of work I do is a lot of it centers around photographic practice, but it looks very non-photographic. So it can be very large installations or sensory ritual events or large photographic work. Or I've just been artist in residence at the V&A and did a big project with Cav Foscari University and a gallery in Venice. So a lot of I describe my practice as a kind of expanded and embodied approach to photography. And it's taken me about 2 decades to understand that. And you can probably see my very large glasses here. And also took me 2 decades to understand that my practically completely non-existent medium or far sight plays a massive role in my practice. So when I don't have glasses on or contact lenses, I can only see about 20 centimeters in front of me clearly. The rest is completely blurred. You get that a lot with artists, particularly with working with photography, weirdly, who have sort of particularities with their sight. But a lot of the work that I do is around, because we often get called visual artists, but I think that's absolutely untrue. We approach the world in a kind of multi-sensory and haptic way, and a lot of the work that I do is around sort of individual and communal experiences, and I use the senses. And ritual sounds a bit scary, like I'm going to do kind of Blair Witch Project things with people, but ritual means more like events that have particular moments in them, and they're very thought through what those moments are. So they might be like a sensory banquet for 100 people. The British Library that I've designed the food and worked with a community garden to make a meal that explores parts of the British Library collection around food and transportation and colonialism, for example. As I say, it's taken me about 2 decades to understand that a lot of the work that I do is almost the way I have to navigate space, where when I take my glasses off, literally I cannot see you on the screen. But if you bring something close to you, it takes on a completely different significance, and you sort of move about in a way where things are suddenly huge in comparison. And you know, I think a lot of people sort of remember as children having that sense of things sort of undulating in weight or in kind of, but that is how I experience. And a lot of the things I do of kind of trying to create very large vistas out of very small miniature things are my way of sort of, I have an impossibility to see vistas. So I take them from my kind of, I have a small area of naked sight. It does sound like I'm extremely almost blind. I'm not blind, but I am very, very short-sighted.
But I feel like that has lent itself to a really interesting perspective on what you're making though, because what you just said about that metaphor of bringing things very close to you to be able to see them is kind of, I suppose, an extended, I don't want to say analogy, but kind of for the project itself, because I think one of the things that's being focused on is people not having any perspective or sense of stories that aren't their own. And I think within the Me Your Neighbour project,
that's beautifully put. And I think actually the sound works really achieve that, where you have this, particularly the kind of the way in which people are welcoming other people into the world. There is that sort of intimacy in some way. And intimacy, I don't mean sort of sensual intimacy. I just mean a sort of, this is my world, this is me. And I think the sound work is really manages to capture the idea of sort of distance and people having had to make quite difficult journeys, and a sort of, how would I say, like a kind of appreciation that we're being invited in or allowed to share part of somebody's kind of welcoming in some way. I think, yeah, in some way we become like sort of guests, or there's something about closeness and distance in it. And I was really attracted to work. I've started been doing a lot more work when I was artist in residence at the V&A, did quite a lot of live events, and contributed to sort of theatrical performances with my work, and then filming that I did. And I realized over time that actually the way I approach projects is a bit like devised theatre. And that's why Maison Fleur, I just love what you do. And I love this kind of dissipated sort of generation of ideas and work. So it becomes this, because that is really, that I just enjoy that so much, not knowing what I'm going to do, and the sort of different inputs and different conversations forming what that is. So I really had absolutely no idea what I was going to do, apart from, yeah, I had no idea really.
That was actually going to be one of my questions to you, was do you plan what you're making, or do you wing it?
I love winging it.
Yeah. No,
That's
brilliant.
like because it's something, and I think that's taken me, it takes time to be able to do that. I've done about 2 decades of practice, and I push much more now, even with very large projects, like the one that I did in Venice. It was a project, I got this environmental art prize, and as part of it I got to work with students and academics at Ca' Foscari University in Venice. So I said that I wanted to develop, sometimes artists develop an installation and then they work with the students to kind of explain what they've done, or I said I didn't know what I was going to do, and I wanted to work with the students to work out what I'm going to do. So I had about just under a year of devising different sessions around waste, and through that developed, and then worked with the academics at the university, and then through that developed a sort of large body of new work, and banners over the Grand Canal and things like, and it just sort of generated itself. But I've become more confident to be able to say that's how I work, and I know it's all gonna the work then becomes more about the moments at which you stop it and it gets resolved into something, rather than some idea of a finished complete piece. I don't think I ever have complete pieces. They're just moments in whatever the work. So that's why I was so attracted, and thematically as well, because my father came by boat when he was 17 from Mauritius to Scotland. He was very lucky, he got a scholarship to study dentistry, so left the island for the first time. And was really a really passionate believer in the NHS, and kind of and then growing up sort of half Scottish and half Chinese Mauritian in the 70s in Scotland, and it not being particularly ethnically diverse, I sort of saw how my father was welcomed but also faced a lot of difficulties. Yeah.
It is kind of this vast conversation of different voices, with various different life perspectives, with various different family backgrounds. It allows that to then keep being inbuilt as the project continues. So that was why, as I say, that was why one of my questions to you was going to be about planning or winging it, because I think there is so much, as you say, there's a huge amount of skill set that has to go behind somebody being able to wing it and do some beautiful work. But just in the sense of the project itself, as you say, it allows the work of the project to also be in the process of making it.
Yes. And there was some quite funny, like, there came these quite sort of formal decisions in terms of making things, the points at which you're like, do I think about something before I get the structure of the house? Does the interesting thing of sort of exterior and interior and windows and viewpoints, and so there was a really sort of interesting, exciting moment of like, right, where am I responding to that? What's the thing that's doing different? So I love that, because it was really like, oh, what's going on here? I really enjoyed it, and particularly with Lydia's house, that sort of sense of because that sense of sort of viewpoints almost being like the viewpoint at the back, there's a circular hole, and that almost being this kind of, this was her as a child, and my goodness, look at this incredible landscape of a world of worlds that she moves through. You know, she's incredibly inspiring. And I don't think you can try and encapsulate somebody. You just try and it felt really important for me as well to use images that each person had provided. I was going to say, I like when it's unexpected, like with Lydia's, it does look it's quite surrealist in a way. I hadn't sort of realized how, and then Barty's is like this kind of huge plant that basically, because at first I was thinking, is it about scenic things? And it's like, no, she's just, you know, growth and care and this, and you know, she's growing and growing things and growing this kind of reaching out, and so it's quite interesting because you meet the person, and then you've also got the sound work, and then you've got the structure, and so I really enjoy that feeling of just being a sort of cog within a larger structure, and a cog not in a mechanistic sense, but in the way somebody does something alters how I have to move, and the way I do something alters how someone else. So there's a constant, and it's still not quite finished in a way, because actually the final bit is also the lighting and because I can't be in person to do it. So I've said what I want, but I've also said, as you're doing it, there'll be things that feel right and don't feel right. So you just go with what that thing is. And particularly in Lydia's one, at first I thought, should it be elements that actually physically move? I was thinking through, and then there are kind of practical, formal things again of actually this is something that has to be can be transported around. There are really practical things you're thinking of, like you can't have things that are going to get caught up. It can't be. So it's trying to give that feeling of movement, because Lydia's very well, both are in different ways. But then also, you know, it was really interesting with Lydia because I put the work, sent the work, and then when it was up, because I hadn't seen that there was, because I got a kind of outline model of the house, there was some shelves. Beth was like, oh, actually you can put some things in the shelves. And I was like, that's brilliant. So then there's another added, so I really like that. Yeah, you know, I could quite happily keep adding or changing it. I understand practically we've also got to stop.
Talking about that kind of growth journey, movement aspect of the work, do you think that there is any significance in where the work will meet audiences, like for instance Derby being the starting place? Not saying you have to have specific geographical knowledge of Derby, but do you think there is significance of it not being, for instance, in a specific gallery space or theatre space? What do you think about that in terms of this specific work?
So I do quite a lot of work that's in people call it the public realm, but there isn't really one public realm. There's lots of different sites. I mean, lots of different, you know, one space and one way of sort of, so things that are non-white wall gallery based are really exciting to me, and I'm always drawn. So I'm often making work in like underground car parks or very strict. So for me, this is quite a it's quite a sort of I'm quite used to working in spaces that are non-gallery spaces as well as gallery spaces. But I think it's really interesting that it becomes a place and a site that I think will be sort of, there'll be unexpected things that come out of each place that it goes to. It's kind of like a traveling experience thing. You see, you can't even say exactly what it is. And I find that really interesting. It sort of slightly defies categories. And I like the idea of, you know, is the work in the sound work? Is it in the response inside? Is it in the outside? Is it in the viewers, the window, the one window that they go to? Is it in the images that they look at that? So I'm really interested in sort of dissipated or experiences where you have to sort of piece the pieces, your pieces together and bring some of you to think about it. So yeah, I think each of the locations, I mean, that would be really interesting to hear.
I suppose in saying that, then it's kind of like the Meet Your Neighbour project. I suppose the work itself is the meeting point for a million different people, and there are even more people for it to meet in these various different spaces, for the conversations around it and just for the work to become whatever it becomes.
I think partly as well, you make it for that person. I think she might be my audience that I'm thinking about. That's it really, somehow, that you're sort of saying this is like you sort of let me into part of your world and your thinking and your and this is what I think with Lydia, it's kind of me wanting to sort of say to her, wow, look where you were as a young girl. Look where yes, you had your case with you, but that's a metaphoric thing. You've always had your case. You're able to sort of contain things and hold things and open things and bring out new things. And then also with Barty, she'll always find the light with the windows to grow these new things. Maybe a sort of metaphorical, yes, she's got her real house has a lot of light, but actually you have the sense that she's got, so I felt a lot of sort of hopefulness through both of them as people. It's nice to talk about it, because actually I have not talked about it. I just do it. So it's nice to be able to actually talk about, because I've not really, you just do, these are conversations that are in your head and your feelings.
I could sit and listen to you talk about it all day, if I'm honest. I think that's one of the things that really, really stands out. And I know you said about the windows being in different perspectives, but even in Lydia's, there's a space where you have to almost crouch down to, and when you do crouch down and see that full kind of aspect of the work inside, even that movement in itself takes you on the journey kind of through and up. This feeling of what's inside isn't just of the house, it's almost of a different world. And I think that feeling of being able to capture that, and kind of stories being so much bigger than just the one story, and being so complex and built up of so many different things, is something that's really captured both in the house and how you view through the house into the work. And then that being the kind of the telescope audio one through which you hear the story. And as you said, the audience being the person whose story it is, I think is absolutely the perfect way to view it, because as you say, with every point of it, the front and center is the story, and everything is kind of the stage for that.
And I was thinking as you were saying that actually the houses become almost like sort of containers of inner worlds, and of ways of, because so much of the sort of public discourse around people coming from other countries, around immigrants, around refugees, or around, sanctuaries. It's not those sort of, it's not seen as people seeking sanctuary. It becomes something where that inner life is, people can become quite dehumanized through sort of dialogue that's about them, people, either migrants, refugees, or doing that. And I think this is a really, the way to counteract that is, like with this project, with Maison Foods project, is sharing inner lives and asking people to feel emotional or empathetic or spiritual or sort of personal connections, because that's how you kind of sort of counteract these very distancing discourses. So I think the sort of intimacy, and almost like the houses being not just about houses, but kind of people as sort of, I don't know, as sort of, we have our outer shell, but it's the inner life that connects us somehow. It's that sort of relationship with both Barty and with Lydia, to kind of do them, to sort of make something that's it's not a representation in any way at all, but it's like a sort of like they've said, hi neighbour, welcome into my, and me saying, oh, that was really lovely to meet you. And that's really what my response has been. somehow. That's what that thing is, like a kind of a sort of very happy guest that sort of says thank you.